Today we're going to be graphing more sine and cosine functions. So we're just going to practice today with amplitude and the period, and then drawing our graphs using our new intervals. So as we were saying yesterday, that amplitude is a number in front, that a value, that invisible 1. Period is 2 pi over our b value, and b is the number in front of x. So 2 pi over 3 is our period. And our midline, since there's nothing out here, we're going to say y equals x. Y equals 0. So now our increments that we're going to use for our table and for our x-axis is going to be pi over 2 divided by b. Now, again, yesterday, instead of dividing by b like this, we're going to multiply by 1 over b. So 1 over 3. So this is pi over 6. So our x values are going to start at 0, but go up by pi over 6. 2 pi over 6, which is pi over 3. 3 pi over 6, which is pi over 2. And then 4 pi over 6, which is 2 pi over 3. So we start at 0, and then I'm going to do pi over 6, pi over 3, pi over 2, and 2 pi over 3. And sine functions we talked about yesterday start at the midline, so the y value is going to be 0. And then because our a is positive, sine is going to go up from our first point, so we're going to go up to 1. Then back down to the midline, down to -1, and then back to the midline. So on the y-axis, I'm going to do 1 and -1 because that's plus or minus our amplitude. Point here, 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 here. So the more you do these, and the more that you look at it as a pattern, the easier they become to do. All right, down here, graph the function y equals cosine pi of x. Amplitude, again, there's nothing in front, so amplitude is 1. Your period is 2 pi over b, or 2 pi over pi. And that's going to simplify just to 2. Midline. I know it might get annoying that our midline is always 0, but I just want us to get in the habit of looking for a number out here to tell us if we're being shifted up or down. That's going to adjust our midline. And then our increments is going to be pi over 2 over pi, or multiplied by 1 over pi. So pi's cancel, and it's 1/2. So our x value is going to start at 0 and then go up by 1/2. So 1, 1/2, 2 halves, or 1, 3 halves, 4 halves, which is 2. So 1/2, 1, 3 halves, and 2. And 1 and 1 is our amplitude. Now the y values, cosines will start either up here if a is positive, at the top of the amplitude, or for positive amplitude, or negative amplitude if a is negative. So far, all of our functions have had a positive a value. So we're going to start at 1, and then we go down to the midline. Then we go down to negative amplitude, back up to the midline, and then back where we started. Our graph looks like that. Remember, this could keep going forever if we wanted to keep going. All right, let's look at the next page. This time we have an amplitude of 3. Our period, 2 pi over b, which is 4, so 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2. And then there's no stuff going on the outside, so y equals 0. Okay, so we're going to take pi over 2. Now, again, we're not taking pi over 2 right here because that's our period. We're using pi over 2 because that's the rule from yesterday. See, we did pi over 2, and we did pi over 2. So it's always pi over 2 divided by the b value or multiplied by 1 over b. It means the same thing. So multiplied by 1 over 4, which is pi over 8. So our increments are going to be pi over 8. So 0, 1 pi over 8, 2 pi over 8, which is pi over 4, 3 pi over 8, 4 pi over 8, which is pi over 2. 0, we have pi over 8, we have pi over 4, 3 pi over 8, and then pi over 2. And because this is cosine, we're either going to start at positive 3 or negative 3, and positive a values. So we're going to go up and start at 3, then go down to the midline, then down to the negative amplitude, back up to the midline, and back up to positive amplitude. So our graph will look like that. Now it will get a little bit more complicated when we're shifting up and down and then left and right as well. You'll see that we're going to have another table to help us out with that. Remember yesterday what I had done is I would do the normal cosine graph and then just did, okay, 3y, and then multiply everything by 3. You don't need to do that, but if it helps you, you're not going to lose anything by doing that. All right, number 4. We have a weird amplitude of 5 over 2. That's okay. Because remember, all that amplitude is doing is going to adjust what my tick marks are on the y-axis. Period is 2 pi over b, or 2 pi over 2, or pi. Now, I always write 2 pi over b because that is something that you do need to memorize. So if I always write 2 pi over b when talking about the period, that's just going to get ingrained in my brain. Y equals 0. So now my increments can be pi over 2 times, whoops, I'm sorry, not 1 over pi, it's 1 over 2. 1 over 2, our b value is 2. So this is going to be pi over 4. So the increments here start at 0, then pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, which is pi. So we have pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and pi. So I'm hoping that making our axes different for each graph is helpful, instead of always having the same grid for all the problems and having to figure out where pi over 4 and pi over 2 is. I'm really hoping that doing it this way helps. Okay, it's a sine function, so we're going to start at the midline, which is 0. And then we're going to go up to our amplitude, 5 over 2, back to our midline, to our negative amplitude, and back to our midline. So then our graph looks like this. So like I was saying, like this sine graph looks just like this sine graph in the shape, but notice that our axes are labeled differently. Same thing with the cosine graphs. They look the same, but because I labeled the axes different, that's how you know they're different graphs. So I hope that this was a good refresher and a solidification of how to graph sine and cosine functions. So thanks for watching the video. Make sure to like it and subscribe.